afternoon's Lunch and Learn webinar, where we're going to discuss display screen equipment and home working. So what is DSE? So DSE stands for the display screen equipment. And DSE doesn't just apply to computers, although this is the most common type of DSE used in the workplace. So any DSE is a device or equipment with that display screen, and this often refers to the computer screen. However, with the way that technology is moving forward now, this will include devices such as your laptops, touch screens and other similar devices. So as you can see from the slide here, we will include things like tablets, users that are using smartphones for long period of times, and other handheld devices as well. So it's not just about that monitor attached to the workstation. So when we think about how do we protect the health and safety of DSE users, so a DSE assessment is an assessment that looks at the risk involved with using the keyboard, the mouse, chair, computer, laptop, tablet, and any other screens at work. A DSE assessment will look at every workstation, and it's hopefully it's put in place there to reduce the number of risks involved and providing recommendations for any issues that can't be fixed straight away. So if you have sat at a computer screen for a long time, you may already be familiar with some of the hazards, and that can include poor posture. Lack of movement is one of the most common issues that are identified within a DSE assessment, and that can result in the severe back, neck, shoulder or arm pain, or even worse, some spine disorders. Severe headaches are also another common problem and are caused by long periods in front of a screen or with screen glare. But computer screens aren't the only cause, though. Slouching over a phone, tablet and other small devices can induce over the long period of time. But with like any other risk assessment that we carry out, we should be assessing the task or activity before it starts. So an assessment should be carried out by staff members where a new workstation is set up. When a new user starts work, you must provide that training to ensure they know how to set up their workstation correctly and how to make adjustments. We do find a lot of people are given their workstations, but they're actually not aware of all the functions that their chair has, and nobody takes them through that process to make sure it's set up correctly. Or when we've also got a substantial change, we will also need to carry out that DSE assessment as well, or the function of that desk is changed into what we're actually carrying out. It could be the equipment's changed, we'd need to be carrying out a new DSE assessment. Where we've got users that sit at an existing workstation and don't have any health issues, don't make any changes, we still need to be carrying out that annual review. So any substantial change can mean that we do have to assess the workstation prior to the annual review. And that could be where we've got long-term injury or illness. It could be pregnancy. So once we know that we've got a user that is pregnant, we need to be looking at each trimester just to review that DSE assessment with them, because they're likely to find that they're going to need some changes to their workstation as they get further into the pregnancy. Or if we've got any reports from a staff member stating that they're just uncomfortable with their current setup. And we do also get quite a few doctors' recommendations. So a user may well have been to visit their doctor where they're complaining of aches and pains, and the doctor will recommend that a thorough DSE assessment is carried out. So you might find that an individual has completed a DSE assessment and alterations are required, but you might be unsure of what type of equipment that you need to supply. It could be that it's going a little bit above and beyond the types of change that you may be used to implementing, in which case then I would always recommend that you do have an advanced DSE assessment carried out by an external competent person. But where any changes are made to a workstation, whether it's yourself that's making them or an external person, there must always be a DSE assessment completed following any changes to make sure that the user's comfortable and that we've met all their needs as well. And also just to close off that DSE assessment. So DSE assessments, they are required by law. And thanks to a short set of regulations called the Health and Safety Display Screen Equipment Regulations, we do have to make sure we are carrying these out. DSC is one area that very frequently does get overlooked within a lot of organisations, and they're only carried out where an issue has arisen rather than it being standard practice, that they are carried out at the beginning of somebody's employment, a change in workstation, an annual review, or any other factor that requires it to be carried out. So it's always worth knowing who that DSE assessment is required for and when it's going to be carried out for as well. There are guidance on the HSE website here for you to go and have a look at, which will take you through DSE assessment setups and how your workstation should look as well. Very short guidance, so they're not too long to read through. I've just brought in here some of the most recent stats that are on the HSE website. So we talk about musculoskeletal disorders and people automatically assume that's more related to manual handling. So although the figures will include manual handling, musculoskeletal disorders are also present when it comes to DSE. So we're looking at the upper limbs, at the back area, lower back, upper back, shoulder blades. And these are what's been reported through the HSE. So just looking at the musculoskeletal disorders here, we're looking at 473 workers suffering from either new or existing or long-standing musculoskeletal disorders there, resulting in 6.6 million working days lost due to these disorders. So although they do include manual handling, just bear in mind that DSE, people will, if an issue is identified through DSE, there have actually been claims in the past against an employer where DSE assessments haven't been carried out, and they will be reported as well. So what does a DSE assessment cover? So obviously it refers to screens in the title there. We've mentioned briefly about looking at the desks and the chairs, your keyboard, your mouse and your footrest, as well as those screens themselves. But not only that, we should also evaluate the general environment. So thinking about their lighting and temperature, humidity, noise levels, and also think about the workload of individuals as well. It's because all of these things combined can have that impact on how the DSE user is actually working with that equipment and how they're managing through their day. So some common issues that we've just got listed on here, some of them are quite obvious, where we look at backaches, neck pains, restless legs, eye strain and visual stress as well. So, we want to make sure that we are avoiding any health issues here. Although DSE doesn't cause permanent damage to the eyes, but working for long periods of time, visually even for long spells as well, can lead to tired eyes, discomfort, and even temporary short-sightedness and headaches. So it's always good that people are taking those breaks away from the machines and having their eyes tested as well. So we've got fatigue, mental stress, although it might not be necessarily related directly to the equipment. It could be that people are actually getting quite anxious where their work setup is incorrect. They may feel that they're being overworked and the equipment isn't suitable. Working without breaks, which we will touch on in a moment. Incorrect equipment, poor work management. Now that could be from the employee or from the employer. It depends on the demands that's put onto that employer as well. So it's always worth knowing that people are working and that they're happy in what they're working with and they are not being overloaded and they're not becoming stressed at work as well. But we could have existing injuries, degenerative conditions as well. So where we've got those kind of conditions, the DSE is really important that it's actually reviewed more frequently than those 12 months, because where people do degenerate, it may be that what equipment you provided to start with may not be suitable in 6 months, 12 months or 2 years down the line. So where we have got particular individuals that have got specific equipment provided for them, make sure that those reviews are carried out more frequently than that annual review for degeneration. We've looked at poor lighting as well on here. So poor lighting, we get a lot of people that do come to us where they're having issues with headaches. It could be that they've got glare from the windows. It could be glare from the lights above them. or the fact that actually the bulbs that are fitted are too high in the luminaires. And some people have actually moved workstations. Make sure your blinds are correct, and it could be that people are actually requesting to have additional screens put onto their screen to block out any additional light there. So what are we actually assessing? So we're looking at your chairs and we're looking at your posture. So the chair is obviously, we spend a lot of time working in our chair at work, and there's nothing more distracting than an uncomfortable chair where we could potentially be having daily aches and pains. And also it can be quite restrictive with blood flow as well if we are sat in incorrect chairs as well. So we need to make sure that we know how to adjust the height of the chair so that when you put your fingers on the middle row of the keyboard, your hands and forearms remain horizontal. Also adjusting the angle of the backrest and the chair seat or seat pan to ensure that your back's supported when you're in a working position. Now we should be working with our elbow joints at 90-degree angles. And this is where, with any DSC and any concerns, I would always look at the chair first to make sure once you've actually got the correct seating position with your elbows at that 90-degree, it's then easy to look about and assess whether we're looking at, we need a footrest installed, we need to be moving monitors. So always go with that chair first and getting that angle correct. So we don't be working with any angled wrists, we want them to be nice and straight. And the same with the knees as well. We want that 90-degree angle with that knee bend as well. So particularly where we might have taller people, it could be that we need to look at a longer seat pad where the backs of the thighs are not supported correctly. We also need to think about the lumbar support. So the lumbar support can be built in. It could be adjustable. A lot of the time people don't realise I've actually got built-in lumbar support and how to adjust that as well. The new modern type chairs, you tend to find that lumbar support is fixed and it can't be adjusted. So it may be additional lumbar supports required or potentially a new chair. You may find that once that chair has been altered, if you're a shorter person, that a footrest may be required if those feet can't be positioned flat on the floor in your seated position. We can get chairs that are suitable for all different types of heights and weights of people, and also ergonomic disability chairs are available as well. But when you've got your chair positioned correctly, your posture will certainly improve in the way that you are sitting if you're sitting comfortably and correctly. And again, where we've got home workers, they may be working from a dining room chair, but they can use a cushion as additional support for that lumbar support they're working at home. Now, the desk setup, we do have people that are using standard desks or sit-stand desks. And again, we need to make sure that you're sitting directly in front of your monitor and keyboard. We've got enough surface area space, so we're not working in a cramped environment. And make sure that we're sat close to your desk as well, allowing the wrists to be supported by the desk when you're typing. So ideally, we're looking at the wrist and the forearm has got support from the desk. So again, if we are using documents when we're working, it may be that we need to introduce a document holder, which will free up some space on that desk as well, and avoid any extension leads and trailing cables. With a desk, what we tend to find is a lot of people will put personal items underneath it, filing cabinets, boxes, anything for storage as well, but that will restrict your leg movement. So we want to make sure our desks are as clear as possible underneath. But where we're using a sit-stand desk, we will DSE. That assessment is usually completed when people are in the seated position, but just bear in mind where people are standing on that the sit-stand desk, that their arms are still at that 90-degree angle to make sure the desk isn't too high or too low. And there is a separate assessment form for a sit-stand desk that can be completed as well. Monitors as well, we just need to be making sure that we are sat at the correct height for our monitors. A screen riser may be required if it's actually sat too low on the desk, and we want to look at adjusting the height of monitor that we're looking horizontally at it with our eyes near the top end of the screen. If we're working on more than one screen, if we're working on two screens, we need to make sure that the resolution is the same on both, to make sure that we haven't got any differentiation with our eyes with adjustments looking between the two screens. And also where the two screens meet in the middle should be the central point to where you're sat. We do find that sometimes people use a laptop as a third screen. If that's the case, or even as a second screen, then a laptop riser will be required. But again, if we've got home workers, they can utilise things like books or a box to use as a riser. It hasn't got to be a specific laptop riser. Now, we've also got your keyboards and your mice. If we're working from laptops, we would preferably be working with a separate keyboard and a separate mouse as well. Now, if we are using that laptop as an additional screen, we will require those to be separate as well. But with people may suffer with arthritis, they may be getting aches and pains in their hands and in their wrists, we might need to consider looking at an ergonomic type mouse. It may be that we need to look at wireless mouse. So we just need to assess that equipment based upon what people report back to you. And as we mentioned as well about your working environment as well. So we need to look at temperature and humidity. Nobody will ever agree on a temperature in an open plan office, but the fact that we can adjust that temperature if we've got opening windows, suitable blinds, eliminating any glare reflections on that screen as well. Make sure that they've got enough space where they are working. So what we also need to consider there as well is some people have to move locations because it's just not possible to make the changes that they require within that area that they're working in. And it may be that a medical condition has been brought to light and a new DSE assessment has been carried out. And depending on what the control measures are that have been put in place, they may actually need to relocate within their office environment. So taking breaks, so whenever possible, DSE should consist of that mixed time of screen-based and non-screen-based work to prevent that fatigue, eye strain and upper limb problems as well. We should be, even if it's just getting up to make yourself a drink or changing a work activity. So, you know, if you usually speak on the phone to people within an office, just get up and take a walk down to the office to that individual. So you're just taking a natural break. Ideally, short breaks, but more frequently, are more advantageous to an individual rather than working for a full 60 minutes and thinking I'll take a 15-minute break. We want to be taking short, regular breaks just to avert our eyes away from that screen. And again, if we've got home workers, we will find that they won't necessarily take their lunch away from their workstations. So again, it's really important to communicate with home workers that they are actually taking those breaks when they are working from home. So we've just quickly mentioned there some home workers. Now, during COVID, there's probably about 86% of the population was working from home during COVID. And since the return to work, we've had a lot of employees that are hybrid working, but a home office is a very different environment to what we're used to within our office. And that can lead to a lack of physical activity because there are prolonged periods of sitting leading to reduced circulation. And again, resulting in increased pain and aches in the neck, shoulder, and potentially leading to varicose veins where we're just not moving. So the combined exposure, whether it's physical or psychological factors, we need to be checking in more so with our home workers because sometimes people will become isolated. They may be quite stressed if their workstation is not set up correctly. And potentially they don't switch off as much. It's not like leaving the office at 5 o'clock and going home. People tend to work longer hours and without taking those breaks. So make sure we've got regular contact with home workers, whether it's from the team members and the managers. And also just request if you're having Teams calls that the cameras are on. This will enable you to engage with that employee and you will visually see if you feel that there's anything with that individual that you may need to address that they're not speaking up about. So always have face-to-face calls with your home workers. Now, again, home workers should be carrying out a DSE assessment at home. Ideally, if you can ask them to provide you with some photos of the workstation, because we just want to make sure that they're not actually just sat on the bed working from a laptop. You don't expect them to have the same setup as within the office, but we want to make sure that they are working as comfortably as possible at home. Now, if we've got hybrid workers that are putting in a request for the same equipment that they're working with at home and in the office to be the same, for a hybrid worker, it's not something that the employee easily has to legally provide. As long as they're working comfortably and they're using the equipment that they need, that's absolutely fine. Now, if the hybrid working is proven an issue with the equipment that they have got, you can request that employee to actually come back and work from the office. However, if you've got an employee that's contracted to work from home, then you will be needing to provide that equipment for them. And if we've got people that have disabilities which just prevent them from coming into the office, then we're going to need to provide that equipment for them. So just really quickly there on the maintaining good eye health. So a DSE user should be entitled to have their eyes tested, which the employer the employer will have to pay for that eye test. Now, if the eye test proves that the DSE user requires glasses purely for DSE work, then we need to be looking at what contributions that employer is willing to pay for a basic pair of frames and lenses. Usually, though, it's very rare that we get people that require glasses just for DSE use. So users are entitled to request that eye test. Now, it's really important that the arrangements of the organisation are shared with employees. So it could be the employee will go and arrange their own eye testing and submit that receipt for reimbursement. Or it may be that you've got an account or you've got vouchers, but it's really important that you do communicate to employees how they go about claiming for that eye test. And what I've put up on here is just some exercises, because people will talk about getting up and stretching, but sometimes people forget about the wrists and the hands when you've been actually working for quite a long period of time. So I've actually put a link to this in the chat function. And I've put a link to our in-depth DSE assessment because it gives you visual illustrations of angles for your knee bends, your arm bends, and some positionings as well that you might not get within your company DSE assessment form. So again, those are in the chat function as a Word document, and also the link to these hand exercises. But it's really good to encourage employees when they are just having a minute just to stop and actually carry out these exercises, because they are really quite useful for stretching those muscles. Thank you very much for joining us today for the session, and I hope you found it useful.